Well, hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 of my Major League Rugby draft preview. Fourth episode where we're talking about different positions, and we come down to the last one, which we've lumped all together: loose forward, number 8s, blindside flankers, openside flankers. We put them all together. There are a lot of them, and we won't talk in detail about everyone because, look, let's be honest, they're not all going to get drafted, and that's fine. As I've said before, if you don't get drafted, but you go through the draft process, that's a good thing for you. Now you've got the draft process done, you can sign with any team you want. Players, remember, who don't even go through the draft process, come out of college, they have to wait. There's a waiting period, but eventually they can sign as a free agent. But there are other options: professional, overseas, graduate school overseas for that matter, USA Hawks, American Raptors. These are options for high performing players who want to get paid but also want to get good competition. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the USA Sevens program and something that's going on there, specifically with one player, which is how we will kick it off. So the first loose forward we're going to talk about will be Oren Bitzer from Life University, a Schultz Award finalist, a terrific player, can probably fill in at lock, although maybe not quite tall enough at the highest level. Can play 8 and 6, no problem at all. Probably can play 7. We'll see about that. But he's getting a look on the 7 side as well, and I think that that's something that players should think about. Every now and then we get a player coming through who wants to play professionally and then is torn between 7s and 15s and what to do there. Because if you play Major League Rugby, you can't really play on the 7th circuit. You can't just really dabble, so you have to kind of pick. The 7th circuit, you look at it and it seems like a pretty great lifestyle. It's a lot of hard work, obviously. Do you get paid well? It's the same as everything, right? You don't get paid particularly well at the highest level compared to the highest level of other athletes, and you don't get paid particularly well at the lowest level. In the middle, yeah, you can share, you're young and you share living quarters with someone, and you get your food at the U.S. Olympic Committee training center in Chula Vista and things like that, and yeah, you can make it work to a certain extent, but it has to be a choice. Yes, you're going to do that. I think that's the thing you got to pick, and we have seen players who picked, and I kind of wish they had gone one way or the other. So that's that. Oren Bitzer, great prospect as a professional in MLR, great prospect as a professional on the 7th circuit. Galileo Rezig has already really started his movement with Toronto Arrows Academy, so he's already playing there. Student at École Technologie Supérieure in Montreal. Not a dumb guy. So he's got a lot that he has to balance in terms of what he wants to do professionally, what he wants to do professionally as a rugby player. Very, very good player. Another one who I think actually really should spend some time thinking about 7s as well. Just fantastic ability to jump between 7s and 15s and do really well either way. Michael Ramos from the University of San Diego. Here's a guy who doesn't play in the very top divisions in college rugby, playing in D1 AA with USD, but I don't think there's anybody who watches him play and say, well, I don't think he can make the next level. I think he would be fantastic, and I think a great pickup. Kian Darling from Lintonwood. I have to say that one of my favorite players to watch. I just think his work rate in a number of issues is really good. And when you talk about work rate, generally what are you saying? You're saying, when you think about it, for a forward, you generally think he's going to hit a lot of rucks. He's going to hit a lot of rucks and play some defense. And I think that's true, but I think Darling's work rate in terms of a support player, Darling's work rate in terms of, being able to make a really good jump in the line out late in the game and been playing hard all day, all of those things translate into a terrific player. So I think he has definite professional potential. Marquez Fuala'au from Central Washington. This is a bit of a dark horse here, but if you watch, and he actually has, for me, one of the best highlight videos on YouTube, because you start watching that, I don't think you see him carry the ball until at least a minute into that video. And for the most part, what you see is him making tackles. And boy, he likes to tackle, and he likes to tackle hard, and he likes to knock people down. And if I'm a coach or a general manager, I'm looking at that and thinking, okay, here's a guy who understands what he brings to the table, and also it's pretty much what we need him to bring to the table. This guy loves to hit. Another Central Washington guy in Alex Cleary. This is a guy who got a Schultz Award look as well, a nomination. Big, powerful runner. I think he runs with the ball very well, and he works hard. I think he's going to be a 6, probably. Could go 8 as an MLR player. And I don't know. I'm not sure if I see tons of speed, but I think it's just like go, go, go from Alex Cleary. I think he, you know what? Look, if I were the Seattle Seawolves, I'd draft him, and simply because he's a homegrown guy. And this is something that a lot of Major League Rugby teams don't really understand, is you've got to get a homegrown guy who you can put on the field and say, I think he went to Ferndale High School, but, whether he didn't, look, come see Ferndale High School's greatest with Alex Cleary and the Seattle Seawolves. That's how you should be marketing it. Cleary would be a great player to have on your team. And one more player, I think, I don't know if I'd call him a dark horse. Nick Andiarena from Adrian. The captain of Adrian helped lead them to some great success, first in D2 and then moving them up to NCR D1. He can play a number of positions, and we could probably say he might potentially be a lock, a little bit of a short lock, but I'd put him in the back row. And I think that this is a player, again, who ticks a lot of the boxes in terms of understands how to play, understands what's required of him in the position, leader, hard worker, all of those things, in good shape, got the body for it. So, Nick Andiarena, keep an eye on him. Now that caps off a list of 6 players who I think have a really high chance of being drafted and get a lot of attention from teams. That doesn't mean that the next group doesn't know how to play. It's just that there's certain things that, look, already we're in 6 deep into this position. So it's tough. There are a couple of players I do like a lot. In my next group, which is a larger group, if I'm looking at this, it's a group of about 9 or 10 players who have a good shot, could go in later rounds, or somebody might be looking for something very specific and say, yeah, this is my guy. So you have Nick Lapanes from Fairfield. I actually think he could do a lot, and he's a good, effective number 8. Every time I talk about number 8, they're probably going to bump him to 6 anyway. But I think he could bring a lot to the table. I'm not sure if he's as well known, well understood through the MLR ranks. Aaron Juma from Wheeling, bit of a dark horse, very quick, gets a lot of work done. Not quite as big and powerful and scary as the top 6. So that's another one to think about. Mark Matuku from Notre Dame College, again, somebody who's not big and massive and super scary, plays very hard, he makes his tackles, he does very well, and I like him a lot. And then another one to think about would be Indiana's Patrick Murtaugh. Now, a classic guy, technically, I think professionally undersized. Man, he gets a lot of work done. Boy, he does. He is one of those guys. Look, if you're a men's club team, you would love to have Murtaugh on your team for the next 10, 15 years. Professionally, I think I would feel the same way, and I think that every year we see on the international level, we see players at flank who we've started to think that if you're a flanker, 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", 6, the number 6 jersey is really almost like an extra lock, and some of the activities they do is almost like an extra number 8, all very tall. Murtaugh is not that tall. Doesn't matter, because you always, every now and then, find a guy who's 5'7", 5'8", 5'9", who puts in a ton of work and helps win rugby games. And, you look at some of the greatest flankers of all time, they're not all super tall. Nathan Beal from UCLA, number 8, kind of like central casting number 8 guy. Good runner, understands how the game moves from overseas, so he doesn't check the domestic box, but very, very good player. Also, Matthew Carey on Life University. He's a very effective runner. He's a shorter guy, more powerfully built, shorter, so then you start to think, what if we convert him into the front row? Get him into the front row and get him running that way and hitting guys and covering the field that way. And that's very possible, and that would be a project. For me, if I'm thinking about a professional career, and I'm a loose forward and I'm 6'1", 240, I'm going to get some time in the front row. I'm going to ask for time and training in the front row. 2 guys from Bishop's University in Canada, Louis Millet, Jack Wallace, both, they're almost the same player, it seems. They're a little bit light, a little bit, tiny bit undersized, 6'1". Get a lot of work done. The professional day in, day out grind, that's a question mark. That's up to somebody to look at them and say, yes, in here and in here I see it. So I don't know. I think they could be somebody gets excited about. Michael Biaggi from BYU, he's a really interesting guy. Been all over the world, and I think does that matter for a rugby player? I think it does. I mean, I think if you're a fairly worldly guy, if you've been through a little hardship, if you've been through just seen hardship and seen different things that go on in the world, I think that allows you to gain a certain level of maturity, which helps you handle living in different conditions, being able to just say, all right, I live here now, and this is what I do now, and I train this way. And I think that you have to think about the mental side of it. Biaggi can play, absolutely can play, but I think there may be an extra X factor in terms of his emotional maturity and personal growth. So now we come to a third group, which I think is players that is just, look, go through the draft process. One of you might be picked, but the thing is that it's just really tough because we've already gone through something like 15 players. There are 39 draft spots. Do you really want to be drafted, or do you want to just think about setting up your professional life and finding out where you live and things like that? So Angus Skinner, Colorado, terrific player. Joshua Kipp, Michigan State, very smart, gets around the park. Anton Vieira, Santa Clara, very good. And Grayson Lawson, Thomas More, Albert O'Shaughnessy, Central Washington, and John Dow from Wayne State, very good leader for that matter. There's pluses for all of these guys, and I would say, just keep plugging away. Noam Torin from Wheeling, Abe Turpin from Arizona are underclassmen. So I've listed them as underclassmen. Look, if you're drafted number 1 as an underclassman, you're still not going to get enough money to make it worth your while to leave school. So unless you've graduated early and you've got your degree, and then you go through and you say, great, because I'm going to graduate school in San Diego, so I'm going to go to graduate school or whatever, and then play with on back and hope to move my way up to San Diego Legion. See, I can understand that, but as rugby players, as athletes, they're underclassmen, so I just sort of leave them off. So that's kind of it. What I'm going to talk about in the final episode, really all the players who I think are likely to be drafted, and actually my list is more than the number of draft spots, and my caveat is I've been plenty wrong before. But what I see is, if you look at, I want to be clear to players, and I want to be clear to their supporters and their fans and their teams, where you sit. If you're a flanker or number 8 going into the draft this year, you're one of about 24 players at that position. There are 39 draft spots. So that's what I'm trying to say, is how realistic it is that you're going to be drafted. Well, everybody's going to look at the top 5 or 6, and most of the teams know those are the guys. So will we see somebody that I listed maybe like 7 through 12 get drafted? Probably. That always happens. But what I'm saying is it's really, really tough. And you know that we saw that there's some depth at wing and fullback, which is kind of interesting. We saw, people are still looking for props, right? They're still looking for good type 5 guys. That's going to happen. There's some depth in some other areas. So to expect yourself to be, the 15th flanker drafted in the draft, I think is unrealistic. So that's why I'm trying to sort of put that out there and give people an idea in all of the positions where I see the players sit. Now, my final caveat this, I'll mention in the next episode as well. I don't report on the Major League Rugby. I don't sit there and ache over who's got these good players and who is lacking and things like that. I freely admit that. I'm just talking about it from the college perspective, the college player perspective. Who's been playing well? Who carries themselves? What are the differences? What are the differences in the college game? And that's a huge thing that I've been talking about. So I try to give people some understanding about that and going forward. But, Major League Rugby teams are going to be thinking the way they're thinking, and they're not going to be asking me. So thanks a lot. Thanks for everybody who supports us, our sponsors, Irish Rugby Tours, Next Phase Rugby, and US Rugby Foundation, whose ads you see on there. Go to the link at the bottom of the screen right now. Let's try. I'll try. Go to the link at the bottom of the screen, and that's how you can support what we do as well. So thank you.